Inland Revenue Service makes historic tax haul, rakes in 650 billion naira in June. Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment partners private sector to support startup firms. Dollar slips from 3-week peak as dollar firms ahead of Fed minutes. Plus, oil steadies after tumble as market awaits OPEC plus clarity. This is Business Express reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Benny Adams, your guide. To have you join us at this particular point in time, I will start by telling you that the Federal Executive Council has approved the medium-term expenditure framework and the fiscal strategy paper for 2022 to 2024. The document, a requirement of Fiscal Responsibility Act, projects 13.98 trillion naira as budget size for the 2022 fiscal year. Minister of State for Finance, Budget and National Planning announced this while briefing newsmen after the council's meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari. Details will come in our subsequent bulletin. Moving on, Senate has passed the 2021 supplementary budget of 982.7 billion naira, 86 billion higher than 895.8 billion submitted by the executive. Let's now join Ignatius Unko to tell us more.
On the 23rd of June 2021, the Senate debated on the general principles of the 2021 supplementary budget. That same day, the bill was passed for second reading and referred to the Senate Committee on Appropriations. 2 weeks after, the Senate Committee on Appropriations has concluded work on the money bill, presented it at plenary, and the Senate has passed the bill. Now, the executive had submitted a total figure of 895 billion, and today the Senate has passed a total of 982 billion, increasing the figure submitted by the executive. And we have with us here the Chairman, Senate Committee on Appropriations, Senator Jibrin Barau, who will provide explanations for this increment. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, now, why the President submitted 895 billion and you increase it to 982 billion? Can you tell us what about the increment?
Well, you see, the fact is that we are running a democracy, a presidential state of government. And in our constitution, it's always specified, it is provided in the constitution, that the executive submits its estimate to us. When it comes to us, we will have to scrutinize and make sure whatever is in there is in line with the wishes and aspirations of the people of this country. Where there is anything to add, of course we need to add. We will add. Where there's anything to remove, we'll remove. And that's what we did today. That's what we did in this process, by looking at scrutinizing the proposal and then making amendments in order to suit the policy and program of government so that everything will go in line with the wishes and aspirations of the people of this country. And that's what we did exactly.
Okay, but are there some of the security agencies that needed to be funded or were underfunded that led to this increment?
Of course, I said in my report, some were underfunded, some were not funded at all. And in our interaction with them, we discovered that there was the need to fund them, or there was a need to increase what was given to them. So that's what happened.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, today too, the Senate has approved the external borrowing of $6.1 billion from the international capital markets. That is it from the National Assembly.
Well, thank you, Ignatius Unko. And still talking funding, the Federal Inland Revenue Service says it has raked in over 650 billion naira in the month of June 2021, the highest revenue realized in a single month since the COVID-19 pandemic started and the assumption of office of the current management. Executive Chairman of FIRS, Mohammed Nami, in a statement made available to the media in Abuja, stated that the feat was achieved as a result of the efficiency and effectiveness of the Tax Pro Max solution. This is notwithstanding the challenges and resistance faced in the early stages of its adoption and the downturn exacerbated by slow economic recovery. As part of its efforts at modernizing tax administration in the country, the FIRS recently introduced the Tax Administration Solution, Tax Pro Max, for ease of tax compliance. The solution enables seamless registration, filing, payment of taxes, and automatic credits of withholding tax, as well as other credits to the taxpayer's account, among other features. And moving on, a whooping sum of about 60 billion naira is annually expended by the federal government to repair vandalized oil pipelines across the country. Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed disclosed this in Abuja while speaking on protecting oil and gas infrastructure in Nigeria.
Nigeria is a nation with a huge and diverse population, blessed with abundant natural resources. But the country is challenged by a massive infrastructure deficit owing to years of neglect. Further compounded by this is the incessant vandalization of oil and gas facilities. Bringing the matter to the fore at this special town hall meeting series, its convener and Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed said, with oil and gas providing 80% of Nigeria's budgetary revenue and 95% of foreign exchange earnings, the impact of pipeline vandalism on the economy can only be imagined.
With an average of 200,000 barrels per day loss to the wanton damage to pipelines and a huge amount of about 60 billion naira yearly to repair and maintain the vandalized points, one can only imagine the impact on the economy.
Two sets of vandals. There are people who are genuinely aggrieved, and there seem to be activism. So they are very different from those who attack this pipeline just for the sake of doing it or for the purpose of stealing. So the combination of the two becomes a national problem.
The region has witnessed alarming youth restiveness in the recent past as a result of agitations for government and multinational corporations drilling oil and exploring gas in the region to pay more attention to the development of the area.
The focus of our conversation today is on protecting oil and gas infrastructure across the country. And joining me to discuss that via Zoom is the Managing Director, BG Technical Limited and Pipeline Professionals Association of Nigeria, Engineer Geoff Onoha. Engineer, you're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. An average of 200,000 barrels lost to pipeline destruction and 60 billion naira being expended yearly for repairs of this pipeline. How did we get here?
Well, thank you again, like I said, for having me on. Just to kind of clearly identify myself here, I'm the chairman of the Pipeline Professional Association of Nigeria. And the companies and individuals who belong to our association have been active in the field since the pipelines and oil production started in Nigeria. Well, if you recall, when these things started in the 50s, in the 60s and 70s and all those times, the focus was on the technical side, the technical challenges of getting pipelines in the ground. Now that has changed over time. We went from laying pipelines on surface to setting block valves on surface above water, to the point now where we are doing everything we can to hide those things away from people who will intervene in them. So a lot of things have happened in the time in between. A lot of social issues, a lot of awareness of the existence, of the value, of the importance of all those assets. So many of these things have contributed to attract different interest people. As you can see in the preceding video, there are so many interests there. There are people who are vandals, there are mischief makers, there are criminals, and there are people who are genuinely aggrieved, some people who feel left out in what is happening. So all these things have kind of built up over time to where we are now, where a lot is really being lost. There's no exaggeration in that. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, I was talking to one of a colleague in the industry who is the CEO of a producing company. They've gone from running pipelines, practically abandoned their pipelines, to creating what they call virtual pipelines. And what do? They string together barges and have the Navy in front, Navy in the back, and transport their crude production over 200 miles on water just to safeguard. And you can imagine the logistic nightmare they go through. So we've come a long way. We need to address the problem. We need to look at the issues and try and solve them. Because it is not sustainable. We can do virtual pipelines with oil. We cannot do it with gas, which is where we are heading.
Well, talking about virtual pipelines, before you get to expatiate on that, according to statistics between January 2019 to September 2020, about 1,161 pipeline points across the country were actually vandalized. What is the impact of this on the nation's economy? I'm talking about the virtual pipelines. How would that one work?
Well, you mentioned about the number of points that have been damaged. That is a lot of loss to the industry, to the country, and to our wealth generation. It's also a lot of damage to the environment, because when these things happen, there's an effect that comes with spillage, and spillage with damage to the environment, and it kind of goes on and on and on. And of course, there is the cost of remediation. So it's a lot of loss that we're incurring. So the numbers you hear, 1,400 plus points, is not an exaggeration. In fact, we suspect from the reports we get from those who go to the field, we suspect that there might be some underestimation in those numbers. So we have a challenge to address, to get the root of the problem and start to address them.
So how do we get to address this? What should we do in addressing it?
Well, I think different things have been done. The laws, there are so many aspects of it. In the Pipeline Association of Nigeria, we look at a matrix. We look at the social, the technical, the legal, the law enforcement components of everything. All these things, they play a part. So when we look at them, there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that will solve everything. But we have to look at the totality of these things. We've been doing a lot of work in the area of technology, changing how we put pipelines, burying them deeper, wide pipelines, boring, so many things have been done. And then there is the issue of social engagement. Why are people aggrieved? What motivates them to go and damage pipelines? What are the issues at stake? How do we address that? And then we look at the legal framework. I'm glad that the issue of the PIB is kind of gaining urgency right now, more than it's done in the past 20 years. Are there mechanisms that are in there that is enough to address some of these issues? How do we relate to the communities? And how do we enforce the law when the criminal elements step in? How forceful are we in acting when we are apprehended? There's so many things. We have a matrix we work with in the Pipeline Association. And we share these a lot, often with interested parties and stakeholders, and try to do the education part. We try to disseminate, to kind of make the linkage between the pipeline in the ground and the electricity we see in your home, to make people do that kind of connection, and hopefully that will contribute. So there are so many elements that play into it. And as a nation, we need to come together and look at that thing holistically and start to address it.
Okay, talking about the social element of it, the host communities are expected to take ownership of these infrastructures. How do we ensure this works?
Well, the one of the ways to do it, and that's one of the things we do in the association, is the awareness. We need to provide that, let people in their minds see a linkage between those structures, those infrastructure that in their communities and in their ground, and their own well-being, and their own pocketbook, and their ability to put food on their table. We have to create that linkage. We have to educate them, but we have to also let them see it, let it hit their pocket. There's some work that needs to be done. Let me tell you a little story. One of the young engineers we sent to the field, who went to the field for the first time, he came back and I was asking him, how did you see the work? And I was expecting him to comment on the technical aspect of the work, or how challenging it was, how they were able to use equipment and technology and electronics. But what he told me was that what shocked him the most, what struck him the most, is the condition in some of the places they went. And it occurred to me that this is the same kind of feeling I had 35 odd years ago. So we have to really do more work in involving the communities, in engaging them, and in making sure that the benefits of the production that comes out of their area, those benefits filter down and they reach them, and they can feel like they're getting part of it.
Okay, you earlier mentioned the use of technology, deployment of technology to ensure that these pipelines are actually buried down beneath the earth. What other technological solutions do you think can be brought to rid of the problem of vandalism, particularly when it comes to surveillance to protecting this particular infrastructure?
Oh, there's a lot that has been done. There are overflights, there are remote monitoring systems, there are alert systems, there are things that are buried under some pipelines that can tell you when encroachment is coming, encroachment deterrence, a host of things that are being tried right now. And there are issues of, I've already mentioned the deep burying, the boring, and protection of surface equipment, special locks, anti-tamper locks, vandal protection systems. There's a host of things that are being done. But let me just say one thing. Sometimes you always ask yourself, you can pretend this, you can alert, you can find out who is coming to your system, who is going to infringe on those places. The next question is, if you apprehend them, if you get there on time, what do you do? And that's another element. That's where it goes beyond the social issue to the law enforcement and to the implementation and to resolution of conflict issues surrounding infrastructure damage and stuff like that.
Oh, thank you so very much, Mr. Geoff Onoha, for sharing your thoughts with us on best ways to ensure the protection of this all-important national infrastructure.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, moving on. Gold slips from 3-week peak as dollar firms ahead of Fed minutes. Commodities market is next. The Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, in collaboration with Nikki Okoye organization, has launched an exercise to mobilize capital in-country to support Nigerian startup firms. The project under the African Enterprise Initiative seeks to also connect Nigerian firms with opportunities outside the country.
and that sustainable development can only be achieved when the foundation for development is laid on the tenets of responsible, inclusive, and balanced investment. An initiative that emphasizes domestic investment, capacity building, and provision of access to global markets for entrepreneurs across all demographics.
So we're bringing together capital, we're bringing together skills, we're bringing together the ability to have a boot camp for entrepreneurs across the country. We're bringing together all kinds of solutions.
And at the close of market today, the all-share index closed at 38,501.31 points after rising marginally. Volume of trade ended at 296 million, valued at 2.562 billion naira in 4,507 deals. Equity capitalization also rose to 20.07 trillion naira. First Bank, Access, and Zenith dominated activities in the course of the day. And on the global market, Asia Pacific shares mixed. Chinese electric car maker Zhengpeng's shares end flat in Hong Kong debut. Bossy Abel has global stocks update.
Hello and welcome to the global market. Reports say investors may be worried about the global stock market based on complacency in the market, the combination of profit margin pressure, inflation fears, Fed tapering, and possible higher taxes, which could contribute to an eventual drawdown. However, the mildly optimistic open in Europe breaks slightly from cautious sentiment. DAX rose 0.8% at 15,634.01. FTSE 100 0.67%, and CAC 40 also topped 0.18% at 6,519.26. Shares in Asia Pacific, on the other hand, were mixed in Wednesday following losses on Wall Street, with the S&P 500 ending its 7-day winning streak. The Hong Kong Hang Seng Index dipped 0.4% at 27,960.62, and the Nikkei also dipped 0.96% at 28,366.95, while the Shanghai Composite topped 0.66% to close 3,553.72. U.S. stock futures traded in slightly positive territory early Wednesday after the S&P 500 ended a 7-day winning streak. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dipped 0.6%. S&P 500 followed suit at 0.2%, while the Nasdaq Composite appreciated 0.17%. While in Africa, stocks traded mildly in positive territory, with the Ghana's GSE Composite dropping 0.5% after being muted for a while. Nairobi's all-share also dipped 0.2%, while South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40, Tunisia's Tunidex, and Namibia's overall index posted gains. That's the global market review segment. I am Bossede Abel.
Thank you, Bossede. And still talking about the markets, oil prices steadied on Wednesday after a steep drop in the previous session following the cancellation of talks among OPEC Plus producers that raised the prospect that world's major crude exporters will turn on the taps to gain market share. Brent crude was up 3 cents at $74.56 a barrel after slumming more than 3% on Tuesday. U.S. oil was up 7 cents at $73.44 a barrel, having declined by more than 2% in the previous session. And on the currency market, foreign exchange charges by Nigeria's deposit money banks hit a year high of $37.76 million in December 2020, compared with $1.65 million in December 2019. Latest data from the Central Bank of Nigeria show. Let's see how the Naira is exchanging for other currencies. That wraps this edition of Business Express. Remember to keep in touch with us by sending in your comments, observations, and suggestions. Also be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channels. Business Express returns Thursday at 9:30 a.m. Be safe out there.